First of all, welcome to lecture number 7. I can't believe it that we are already in lecture number 7. And so as you recall, I promised you 13 lectures. So we're crossing the middle of it. So the usual introduction, myself, Libby, who wants me to scream, and Ayala, and obviously Ruti, who is not in here. Ruti, give me your picture. Next time we'll add you here. Okay, so what is Smart Up Academy? I always repeat this. Our purpose is to teach the profession of building a company. Okay? What I believe in is that we can teach people, entrepreneurs, how to build a company. That there are principles, very much like in any engineering profession, that you can teach. Many of the problems you face or are going to face have been encountered before, and there are solutions for them. And so what we try to do in here is expose all of these issues in advance and teach you how to deal with them. So this is called the foundation course. And the first thing we want to do is tell you what do we consider to be a successful company. And we put 3 principles for a successful company. First and foremost is it should be profitable. Second, it should be fast growing. And third, it should have a modest investment. So a company that raised $50 million and was sold for $30 million is not a huge success, even though the exit was $30 million. So what we're trying to show in here is how do you build a company with relatively, Ellie, there's a chair right here. With a relatively modest investment. What is a modest investment? Anywhere from a few $100,000 up to $3, $4, $5 million. What today, in today's parlance, is pre-seed, which is kind of ridiculous. And we also have workshops to deal with specific subjects. And the most important thing is I can teach whatever I want. I can give lectures. I can send materials. And the moment you face the problem, you forget everything I said, and you're going to do what your gut tells you to do. That's life. So the only way that I believe to learn is by practicing. And for that practicing, I put the picture, which reminds everybody, you're not going to go to any doctor that finished MD school after 6 years and is on the dean's list, but I've never seen a patient. You would stay away until he spends 3, 4, 5 years in the hospital, and then maybe you will go, but you would like to really talk to the head of the department. Why? Because he has 20 years experience. So that's what we're trying to do here. So since we are in midway, I thought I will give a very, very quick recall or summary of the previous lectures. I'll do it very quickly here. If we have time at the end, I took 2 or 3 slides from each lecture so I can repeat and talk a little bit more about what we learned in the last 6 lectures. But here we'll just really touch it on, So the first lecture was about the venture capital model and compare it to the Smart Up model, which I think is the core of a lot of what people believe today a startup should look like, comes from what VCs need in order to return their investment. So we talk about how the money flows in a venture capital firm. We explain why they must have an exit within a relatively short period of time, which is about 7 years, maybe with a little bit of extension. And really that working with us, we're talking about a very different target, which is profitability. And we're talking about the infinite game, no exit. So we want people to build the company to as long as they want without any outside constraints. The second lecture, we talked about branding first, and the idea there is before you start developing the product, before you invest anything in R&D and do all of that stuff, try to make sure that people heard about you, know something about you, that your name is out there. How to do that, we talked about in the following lecture. Talked about SEO long tail. Talked about repetition, that you have to be out there, that people know about you. We brought in the advertising of the Absolute Vodka, which I think is the hallmark of repetition. They had like 3,000 ads, all different from one another, and all have the same theme. Talked about thought leadership, which is how Gartner built their brand, the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and we spent a lot of time on it. And talked about the competition by the Inc. 5000, how they built their brands around the competition. So there are many, many ways of building a brand. We covered it in the third lecture. Fourth lecture was about what is a business model. And what we did there is we built a spreadsheet. Basically, a business model is a spreadsheet that looks at the income, the revenues, and the expenses, and the difference between one and the other is hopefully profit. At the beginning, it's probably a loss. But what we did in here is we also tied the three principles: be profitable, grow fast, and small investment, to three measurements that we do on the business model, which is the number of months to profitability, how fast can you become profitable, the investment you need obviously correlates to the investment, and the number of months to repay the investment. So if you raise $2 million, when do you generate enough profits to pay back the $2 million? I know that it sounds like a heresy for tech companies, startups, returning the money. What are you talking about? But in reality, in every other normal business, when people give you money, they want to see it back. If you invest in real estate, the first question you ask is, when can I get my money back? Right? It's just the venture capital, high tech, all of that bubble live in a very different universe. Yes?
What do you mean by retain? Like dividends? Or?
Generate enough profit that cover the expense. If you really return it or not, it's a second question. But
how do you measure it?
Profits, just accumulate the profits.
Let's say I invest something.
Let's move on. I'll talk to you later, okay? Because I'm just now repeating what I talked a few lectures ago. All right, if you were a few lectures ago, I would have happily answered you. Obviously, if the top line is revenues, then the question of pricing models is critical. We talked about several things on how you can change the price. Different market segments, usually you can charge very different prices. You just need to be smart about how you differentiate market segments. Depends on the positioning. Do you want to go and be upstream? Do you want to go after businesses? Do you want to go after individuals? And our recommendation, because you want to be profitable, it's much easier to be profitable when you charge $100,000 than if you charge $100. But obviously, everything has to change if you want to charge $100,000. So we talked about that as well. And the last lecture was about jobs to be done. And we talked about the 4 dimensions by which you can analyze and measure what is the job to be done. By the functional, what is the specific jobs customer want to do? Contextual, in what context? When do they want to do it? Where do they want to do it? Why do they want to do it? Emotional, many, many times there is an emotion, like people buy dresses or watches or a car. Status symbol, they want to feel good about it, right? And same goes for social. So that's kind of a very, very quick summary of what we discussed until now. And today I want to talk about a whole different concept, which is a growth engine. What is a growth engine? So a growth engine is a process. Let's first with that, okay? It's a process that the company does or plans to do many times and repeatedly. It's not a one-time process. It's something that you kind of do as part of the company operation. And it can be in any part of the company, okay? So branding, marketing, manufacturing, sales, accounting, customer support, you name it, there is a process somewhere there. And what I want to talk is what is a growth engine in each one of those, okay? So a growth engine is a scalable process. And what do I mean by scalable? You can double the output with a very small increase in the input. And the input is efforts, okay, or money, or whatever you want to do. A linear one is if you want to double the output, you double the input, right? It's a linear. This is not, I avoided calling it exponential, okay? But it's clearly something that many, many times you have a beginning investment, you build some infrastructure, and then you can get a much higher output because you have the infrastructure. And we'll see a million examples throughout this presentation. The growth engines are really critical to accomplishing the three targets that we want. Without building your company, thinking about the concept of a growth engine, chances are you will never accomplish this. Okay? So it's a mindset more than anything else. You have to do a job, it's repeatable, it's happening all the time. Spend the time to think about how can I do it more efficiently. More efficiently means scalable. I need to do it 10 times bigger, but I don't want to increase the expense 10 times. Okay? Okay. I want to talk about what is kind of people think about them because of the word growth is tempting to think about it. So I call them growth opportunities, but they're not really growth engines. So I hope that by giving you that list, you will start seeing the distinction I'm making between growth engines and other things. So strategic partner, right? You have a startup company and suddenly you get a phone call from a big company and say, oh, we heard about what you do. We're really interested. We want to talk to you, right? Strategic partner. We want to do something together. Is that a growth engine? The answer is no. It's a one-time event. It's not scalable. And in most cases with a strategic partner, it's the fly telling the horse, look at how much work we did, right? They don't, strategic partners usually are a mismatch to a small company. So don't waste your time even on it. Very large customer, again, tremendously tempting to spend all the effort. The problem with a very large customer, again, unless you're a much bigger company, you have one of those, it's not scalable, and they know they're a very large customer, so they basically, you're laughing, right? They basically own you because they're dragging you around to, they suck your resources completely, okay? So don't call those growth engines. It's not an engine, okay? Important distributor. Again, you're doing something, you get a phone call from India and somebody tells you, wow, I'm the biggest distributor of XYZ things in India and I heard about you good things, blah, 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 blah. Stay away from that. It's not an opportunity. He's calling you because he's in a distress. You don't want to. Maybe, yeah. But I'm just saying because I've seen it time and again with companies. They come in and they're excited and they tell me they got this phone call and wow, No, it's not wow. That's not a growth engine. Critical trade show. Well, I don't know how many of you run a company, but in most companies there is an annual or twice the year huge trade show for the specific things that you are doing. And your VP marketing tells you, we have to be there, because if we are not there, there's a statement that we are a total failure. We have to be there. And the booth costs $100,000, and sending the people is another $50,000, and blah, 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 $250,000. But it's really, really important for us to be there. The answer is, there's better use of $250,000. You can go there as a visitor, you spend $500 and you enter the hall, but why? Because it's not scalable. Even if it was successful, you can't do another one the following month. You just can't. So it's irrelevant, kind of. I'm really digging into it just to give you a sense of what is scalable, and it's a growth engine. You can turn it on and on and on versus things that are one time or just noise, even though they look so important. Marketing, okay, so You hire a VP marketing and they pull out their plan, which is the same plan they used in the last company, and in the last 2 companies, and in the last 3 companies, and in the last 4 companies. It has the same plan. We're going to put blogs on the internet, we're going to write articles, we're going to issue press releases, and most important, when a new VP arrives, they change the logo. I have about 10 different logos of Zoom Info because every VP marketing that came in changed the logo. I didn't let them, but there was like a sun with a lot of rays, and each VP marketing pulled one of those. So we started with 11, and I think we ended with 7. So just so that they feel that they did something. Why is it not a growth engine? It's not a growth engine because the other side doesn't look at it. You can write as many press releases as you want, nobody reads them. It's that simple. If you want your blogs to be interesting, it's really difficult to do. And after you do 2 or 3 of them, unless you're really a phenomenal writer, most companies produce 2 or 3 good ones and then they stop. It's just hard to do good writing, interesting and innovative every week or every month. Okay? Same goes for articles. So they are not a growth agent because it's very hard to sustain. Not the end of the world, but it's very hard. Very few companies succeed. And it's difficult to invent content that people will read. It's just very difficult. And obviously the next big feature, if we just had that feature, the whole world will buy it. No, they never heard about you, so forget about it. Okay? Company attention must be focused on identifying and building growth engines. Okay? I said it before this slide, and I'm saying it again. You really have to be obsessed with thinking, how can we do it better? And if it's an important activity, you have to be haunted. How can we do it better? Because that's the only way you're going to grow fast and become successful and profitable. So let's look a little bit about what other companies did. I already talked about many of these things, but you will see it again. So we talked about SEO, which is companies that build very large presence or very large data sets of information on the internet, get a lot of people. So how do they do it? This time what I'm going to do is, instead of talking about the technology of the SEO long tail, I'm going to talk about the growth engine embedded in it. Okay? It's just a different view, a different angle on the same activity. So LinkedIn, what did they do? They basically built an empty platform. Who puts the content that is worth so much? You and you and you and you and you and you. Right? Their success was in convincing all of you that it's important and valuable for you to put your input, your data, your information into it, whether you are a company or a person. Okay? But remember, their growth today, this is a growth engine, has very little to do with their investment, because it's the impact that they had on people, that they come in on their own will and they put the information in. By the way, because of that, they lost the lawsuit. There was a company that scraped them. They sued them. The company said, but you don't own the data. It belongs to the people. The only reason they put it is for others to read it. I'm other and I'm reading it. And they won. Okay? Which is why Zoom Info had all the data from LinkedIn. They sent us a letter, cease and desist. And while we were debating with them, the courts solved the problem and said, no, you don't own the data. TripAdvisor. So TripAdvisor started by seeding the internet or their site with list of locations and hotels. They just put the hotel basic information, address, a few pictures. And then people, they didn't even expect it. People started writing a lot of input about the hotels, about the locations. And it started attracting more people, and then they figured out how to make money out of it. Again, I knew the founder. But here is again, they build the foundation, but the data is coming from users. Okay? Yelp, same thing, okay? You can even find in Yelp, if you look carefully, you will find a company called Elion Technologies up on River Street in Cambridge. That's the name by which Zoom Info was created in the year 2000. And they have a very old database where this information is still there. Nobody enriched it for whatever reason. I don't know why. But you will find Elion technologies there. Facebook, very similar, okay? Except that it's not just that it was empty. You have the network effect. So nobody will put information there unless there are readers. So people invite other people to connect with them, to see what they do, and so forth. So that's a typical classical network effect. Again, I'm not saying it was easy to do, okay? Don't misunderstand me. I'm just trying to show you what a growth engine is and how it feeds on itself in these ways. Zillow again, but Zillow is somewhat interesting, which is why I put it in here. It's basically a page per address in the US. Every address in the US appears there. They begin it with, just a mapping application, but then they started automatically enriching it by connecting it to other databases. For example, every house in the US that is sold or bought is reported, so they can get it in the public domain data. So they can take this data, enter it into it, and then they can start doing an analysis that in this neighborhood, in this city, the average price per square foot is so and so forth. So they did all of these connections, but from then on, the information is updated all the time automatically. Okay, so that's the growth engine of it, okay? And obviously Amazon, no need to talk about it. What I want to do again is go over something that I described, I think, in the second or third lecture, which is one of the companies in SmartUp called Opster. Those of you who were here heard, but what I'm going to do is actually look at it again, but this time look at it from a perspective of a growth engine. Okay? How did we do it with very little resources, and how did it grow afterwards? Okay? So it's a tool for a DevOps engineer. I trust that nobody here ever heard about Elasticsearch or Elasticsearch clusters. Doesn't really matter. And the prospects were DevOps engineer, Elasticsearch DevOps engineer, and we were looking for a way to create a brand. Okay? So that was the question we were facing. And the way we did it, again, those for you who were not in the lecture, we started to look at the problem, not the solution, okay? Because we didn't have a solution at the time. Well, we knew there is a problem in maintaining Elasticsearch clusters. And so we asked ourselves, if a DevOps engineer encounters a problem, what do they do? Okay? And the answer became, I asked it several times, and then suddenly Ziv, who was the founder, said, well, I don't know, there are error messages that they produce, and they put them in a log. So you can, I look at a log many times, and I see the error messages, so I know what's wrong. I said, oh, interesting. How many error messages are there? So let me first show you the examples. Okay, could not lock index writer is locked. Delaying allocation for unassigned shards, next number. Basically, mumbo jumbo. None of us understand what it means. Okay? But what we did is we took all of this information and we built a page per error message. And we published it, and lo and behold, because this is Google, we put the first line, you see, could not lock about whatever it is, and we are the first place. And the reason is there was no competition. Who on earth is going to put information on Elasticsearch error logs? Nobody in the world except Opster. So when people copied it from their log and put it in Google, we came up first. Okay? So that was an easy give. And how did we do that? So I asked Ziv, tell me, how many error logs exist? He says, I don't know. I said, can you know? He said, yeah, piece of cake. Give me a few minutes. He wrote a script because it's an open source, right? He wrote a script. Don't ask me what was in the script. And he answered that there are about 700 different error logs. So I asked him, okay, let's take a few error logs. Tell me what they mean. He looked at them and he said, honest to God, I have no idea. So we're developing a product. We don't know what it is, right? We're trying to build a brand. we have a direction, and we have no clue what it means. Okay? So what we did is the following. We took the 700, and I'm explaining it in detail because I want to show you how you build a growth engine with very little investment. So we took those and we said, what can we say about them? So, okay, we can copy where the error log is printed and put 3 lines of code above and 3 lines of code below and present it. Great. We can also show you in what part of the code it is. So you know if it's in the indexing, if it's in the search, if it's whatever, okay? And we added some mumbo jumbo if we find some mumbo jumbo on the internet, mainly at Stack Overflow. Okay, and we published it. And here's what happened. We published the 700 pages, and we discovered that about 60 pages generated the most traffic. So that means that these were the error logs that were of the most interest to people. So what we did that, which is not rocket science, is we went to experts and we asked them what do they really mean, and most people didn't know, but they did the research, and we enriched about 60 pages. So what we got, think about the amount of work we invested, which was very, very little. We got the best real content on this, on the web, with very little investment. And that's the key issue here. That's what I call the search engine, growth engine. Okay, so here are the results. You can see the traffic growing over time. The reason it ends in 2022 is that a year later we sold the company. So traffic is great, but we needed customer. So we did another trick of a growth engine. This trick is you develop a free product and you give it to people. The only thing you request is when they use it or download it, they put their name and email address and so forth. All right, so you convert all of these anonymous traffic into real people. And this was it. Welcome to Opster free checkup. And you can just take 2 files that you can take from the Elastic cluster and put it in there. It analyzes it. And you need to create an account. And this again, we made an investment to develop checkup. So that was, I don't know, a month, 2 months of an engineer time. But from then on, it worked forever. Growth engines, remember, you want a small amount of effort that can scale up. This is very different than dealing with a strategic partner or a big customer who sucks up all your resources. We did that kind of on the side. Okay? You start to get the feeling of what a growth engine is. Okay. Very low customer acquisition cost. So we spent very little money in order to get this. And these are the numbers. You can see it growing. Okay? The red is new ones, and the blue is the total number. Okay, but we wanted to continue to do, this was the first content we developed, what I showed you. But there was a hunger in the market for a lot of explanations and how-tos on Elasticsearch. It turns out that Elasticsearch was pretty bad at writing content about the how-to. How do I do this? How do I do that with my system? And I'll explain in a moment why. Only good engineers can produce good content. But what do the good engineers do? They write code. So the VP marketing says, I need you to write at least 1 how-to article a week. And he says, sure, no problem. And then a month later, they come and say, so where is it? He says, oh, I was busy. There were these issues. Nothing happens. Okay? So that's why there was not good content on the web about how-tos. And here's how we did it. So what we did is we encountered the same problem internally. Okay, so we weren't that smart. We tried to use our engineers to write good content, and we encountered the same problem. So the marketing group were very smart, and they said, I have a solution. And the solution was, let's use our very sophisticated, talented technical people just to tell me what they want to be written, not the writing itself, just what is interesting, what how-tos are interesting. So they sat down and they put a curated list of, let's call it titles, subjects. I want you to tell me how to do this, how to do that, write me an article about that. So we had a curated list. And then we published it, and we are, on Upwork or whatever, I don't remember where we published. We published in several places, and we asked people who understand Elasticsearch if they want to bid for that, and that we're going to pay $300 per article. And we got, several good bites, and people did it. And then we took what they wrote and they sent it to the same people who curated the list. And we asked, is that what you expected? Is that good enough or not good enough? And we narrowed down the writers to about, I think there were 5 or 6 at the time when the company was sold, that were writing really good content. So what each one of them would do is they go on the list, pick a subject, put their name next to it, and write it. And there was a person in the marketing team, happened to be my daughter, that managed it and made sure that they do write it, and they gave her the time when it's going to be ready, and she was bothering them to get it ready. But we edited the articles when they technical people said it was good enough. My daughter looked at it and corrected the English. And we consistently published several articles a week, consistently. Why? Because we outsourced the work, but in a way that we had full control over the outcome at a fraction of the investment. This is why I went into the details. Remember, it's a growth engine. You want something that is sustainable, that can continue to work. People came in and out of the group of people who were writers. Some of them went on vacation, some of them did 2 or 3 articles and stopped. But all the time we were hiring people per article. We had a process of figuring out whether they're good writers or not. We produced the list of subjects, and it continued to produce all of that. As I said, the company was acquired. And it was acquired for what I wrote in the AutoOps was the main product, which was extremely important for Elastic, but also for the content and the brand that we created. So they integrated the AutoOps tool into it. But more importantly, what for me at least, is that they took the marketing team to recreate the same process. Literally. They took the marketing team, they used the same writers, outside writers, okay? Same process, exactly the same process, and they said, we heard it later on, that they tried for years to produce this content unsuccessfully. Drove them crazy. The reason they bought us was because their customers started to turn to us much more than they turned to them, and the tech support engineers, when people call them and say, how do I do this? Oh, go to Opster, they'll tell you. That really angered them. So again, a growth engine, because the amount of effort we put in was very, very small compared to the output. Give you another example. Okay, card scan. You can see the picture. It's a scanner. I'm now talking about the mid-90s, 1995, 1996. You want to connect any hardware, this one specifically, any hardware to your computer. They had a desktop box. You open it. There was a bus. Bus is like, where you put things. You had a control board. You put it in there. And basically, I showed the demo to my board of directors. And Chris, one of them, said, Yonatan, there's no way anybody is going to do that. And I said, you're absolutely right, but that's the only product I have. So we're going to sell what we have. Later on, with this product, we already had a parallel port. It's something that I don't know that anybody here remembers that there is a parallel. You guys are too old. Okay. Anyway, however I look at it, installing CardScan was tough. People called the tech support. the number of tech people grew very, very fast. And it's totally linear with the number of units we sold. And that was scary. Because remember, growth engines, you have to grow the output without growing the input. And here we just did one to one. So I called all the tech support people, and we sat down and we said, we need to figure out a growth engine in here. We have to figure out a way to do it. So we started looking at what takes the time. Why are we wasting time? What's going on in here? So obviously, the first thing you wanted to do is identify the problems and solve them, right? So that when people try to install it, we'll install and not get into problems. So we created a weekly meeting. Every week, the tech support engineers sat down with the engineering team, and they said, here's the top 10 items that we saw this week. I think later on we did it once a month. And we basically solved those problems so that they don't become a tech support call. But I think the real insight was the following. You call a bank or any company, you expect to get, you are number 13 online. If you want, we can call you back, put your number in here, wait 3 hours, and we'll call you back, or whatever. Nobody answers the phone. Nobody. Right? Nobody answers the phone. So we looked at it and we said, this is a phenomenal opportunity to change people's opinion about card scan. What happens if we answer the phone, we put a target to answer the phone within 30 seconds? 30 seconds. And we measured. And the idea was the following. The phone rings, the first line, which is somebody, we said, today you are first line, okay, picks up the phone. That's his job, or her job. And what you try to do is triage, like in a hospital. Hadar miyun, right? You pick up the phone and you find out if it's something simple you can solve. If it is not simple, then you tell the person, let me move you to a more advanced technician. Now people feel great, right? I called, I got an answer, they think I'm serious, a big problem. They're going to move me to the expert, wonderful. And they were willing to wait then, okay? Because they answered the phone. We ended up solving a good number of the issues in the first call. Then what happened is that in the second, the expert call, you have many times, this is PC, right? You do something, you now need to reboot the computer. Remember this reboot? Reboot took about 4 to 5 minutes. In the old days, before we did the changes, you just started talking about baseball, the weather, and all the American nothing. So we told them, okay, reboot the system. It should work. If it doesn't work, call us again. No, I have you on the phone. Sir, how long did it take before we answered the phone? He says, well, that was a real surprise. You answered the phone. We will answer your phone again. Don't worry about it. It will work, and if not, call us again. And people went off the phone. So we finished the call. And if there was a problem, they called again. Not a big issue. We grew and grew and grew. We ended up doing about 100,000 units a year with 4 engineers. That's it. We never added another engineer here. What I'm trying to say in here when I talk about this growth engine, think about it in every space of the company, whatever you do. And try to say, how do I grow the output without growing the input? This is the question that will make you grow fast and make money. And I've shown you until now a lot of areas in a company where that can become interesting. Okay, I want to compare Apple and Samsung. First of all, who here is using a Samsung phone? Raise your hand. Wonderful. Question, how did you decide which of the iPhones, of the Samsung phones you want to buy? How did you decide, and how long did it take you to say, this is the model I want? You raise your hand, how long?
Just the latest model, I guess.
But there are a lot of different models there.
News articles.
News articles, what else? Anything else? Advertisements, what? Comparison, right? Okay. How did you decide where to buy? You compared prices, right? Okay. And did you make any decision about when to buy, like on Black Friday, Amazon?
Usually I buy a phone when the last one is. But I jumped in the swimming pool with it. So.
Okay. So there is a reason I ask all these questions. You will see it in a moment. So let's look at comparing them by numbers, okay? So Samsung wins. They sold 271 million units. By the way, I got all of this information from ChatGPT. I tried to look at where they took the information, but no guarantee the numbers are correct, okay? But they are. I looked at the original articles. By the way, if you want to do that, you have to go to Edge, use Copilot in Edge, and then they give you the source of every piece of information. So it's important. So Samsung sold 271 million units and Apple only 238. The market share doesn't work out because you can compare the two numbers and they don't represent 20 and 16. But to my benefit, they said that's the market share in Q3, whereas the top one is the entire unit. And revenues, again, they win. They did about 246 million in that unit. Remember, these are all conglomerates. And Apple says that about half of their $394 billion was from the iPhone. So about half, 200 million. That's what I put. So who wins? Samsung. Okay. But let's look at that. Share of the phone industry profits. Doesn't look at all like what we looked before. 15% goes to Samsung, and 75% of the entire industry profits goes to iPhone. Gross margin per phone, Samsung less than 20%, Apple over 55%. And the impact is in the last line. Samsung is worth about 400 billion. Apple is worth 8 times more. $3.2 trillion. Any idea why these numbers don't generate these numbers? Branding, but the branding should come here. So you should sell more phones. Here is what you go and find on the Apple website. iPhone 15 Pro, iPhone 15, and surprise, surprise, iPhone 14, and if you look, I've copied below, iPhone 13. So Apple's idea on how to put different price points of their system is not to introduce several models at different prices, is to basically introduce a new one and then relegate the previous year to the next level of pricing, and 2 years ago to the third level of pricing. They accomplished several things. Number one, their entire engineering and production team is focused on a single phone. Single phone. Think about how many people they save by not worrying about it. I only produced one phone this year. Okay? The lifetime of the older phones is now 3 years. Okay, so they have cleared everything about it. They don't have to deal with obsolete models because they keep selling them. Okay? So now you start to understand where their gross margin comes from. But the real issue here is the following, okay? This is the same comparison, but this time I look at the number of models. The reason I asked you about it is they have Galaxy S, Galaxy Note, Galaxy A, Galaxy M, Galaxy Z, Fold, and Zip, and Blip, and Dip, and I don't know what else. I tried to figure out once which one I'm going to buy. And honestly, I couldn't figure it out. Now, the reason I asked you a question is the following. And we're going to get to it later on. I call those inhibitors of friction. When a company wants to grow, it has to make the purchase process as simple as possible. And you will see many examples later, okay? You want people to not have to think. When I say go and buy an iPhone, I don't need to tell you which one to buy. There's only one to buy. iPhone 15. You don't need to compare, you don't need to read articles, you don't need to do anything. One phone. Your entire thinking is, am I going to buy an iPhone or am I going to buy a Samsung? That's about it. When you say, I want to buy a Samsung, you just ask quick people, which one do you recommend? How does this work? Blah, 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 blah. You wasted 4 weeks that Samsung didn't see your money. Just think about it. Okay? Pricing. Apple is adamant that you buy the phone for the same exact price in every single outlet, a store. Now, this is illegal. This is illegal. I'll explain. By American antitrust rules, you can decide at what price you sell it to the store, the distributor, or whatever, and you cannot control the price they sell it to the end user because they want to encourage competition. So Apple doesn't tell you at what price you should sell it to. But if you sell it at below the price they told you, then suddenly they run out of inventory for you, which is totally legal. I mean, I ran out of inventory. So very quickly, the market realized that if they want to work with Apple, they have to sell at Apple's price. Now, I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs. I think the guy is one of the biggest geniuses in business and engineering. So I copied that in CardScan. We made sure that CardScan had the same price everywhere you go. There were no promotion, no nothing. Every day of the year, you didn't have to wait till Christmas or New Year or whatever it is. Again, every one of these things is friction that delays the purchase, which means it delays the money to Apple or Samsung. Right, so I want to show you that. Why is that? So delivery persons, okay, they give them a call. Vault Courier Partner. You're not an employee by any chance, okay? You can earn money by delivering orders to local customers as if you control the local, right? When and where you want. They are staying away from adding people to the process because that gives them tremendous flexibility, okay? No fixed employment cost, pay-per delivery, no benefits, no insurance, no vacations, no anything. That's why they do it. Again, it's a growth engine. They can grow significantly just by putting an ad, and anybody who wants to come. Okay? Really simple. They also can shrink easily. They just don't have things to deliver, so the person doesn't come. That's it. Which means they have tremendous flexibility to grow and shrink by demand, which makes it much cheaper. Think about the iPhone and the Samsung and all of that stuff. Okay, I'm trying to give you examples that you start to understand what an engine means, what power it gives you. Now, there's another company who didn't stay behind. It's called Amazon. So they have delivery service partner program. The basics about being owner, operator. Again, not my penny, you do it, okay? Of your own Amazon delivery business. Work as an independent contractor. They made it very, very clear. We are not your employer. We're not going to give you any money. Forget it. You do it on your own. Okay? Same idea. You can see that in many industries, that they farm out the work. Today you see it a lot, Airbnb, same thing, right? All of these platforms do the same things. When I was now in Boston, we needed somebody to help us schlep 12 suitcases from 3rd floor down. And my daughter said, why don't you use TaskRabbit? I said, what is that? And they said, oh, you can ask whatever you want and people can just do it. All you want is somebody to come in and schlep 12 suitcases, 3 flights of stairs. That's it. So we did it and somebody showed up. He's doing his master's in physics. I was the best person I ever met. Okay, so CardScan again. So we began by producing the scanners, but our CFO was a really, really astute manager. And what he wanted to do is become almost like a vault. When somebody buys CardScan, I'm going to buy it somehow and ship it to him, but I don't want to own any inventory. I don't want to invest anything. So With a lot of hard work, he figured out a company that produced all the stuff that was not just a scanner, and he convinced the scanner manufacturer to manufacture it in Taiwan, send it overseas to California on their penny, and from California drop ship it to this person whenever they request it, without us giving a penny. When we got an order, we send the order to these people. The order shipped, when we saw the shipping chart, we paid the money. So that means from a cash flow perspective, we can grow and shrink as easily as possible. Same idea. How did he do that? Don't ask me, I don't know. I asked him several times and he says, I know, I'm pretty convincing, I guess. But that's what he did. Then I brought in a new CEO and he did something that really shocked me. What we used to do, I'm not now talking about end of 1990s, maybe 2001, 2002. When we sold, let's say, to CompUSA or Office Depot or Office Max or any of these stores, so they told us we need, let's say, 3 scanners in each store, times 200 stores, send me 600 units. We send them 600 units. We gave them an invoice for 600 units and we got paid. And then we kept shipping every time they told us in this store they're missing 2, this store they're missing 1, and we shipped those. When we switched to the next generation, which happens once a year, we had to take back 600 scanners or whatever it is, and we had to give them the money back on those scanners, which made our financials look like that, which was a horrible thing to do. He tried to convince them to put it on consignment, which means when I ship to you 600 scanners, I don't send you an invoice, okay? You only pay me for units that are sold to end users. And I said to him, that's stupid, we want the money. And he said, you're right, but because it is so hectic, it's very hard to manage the company in a rational way because all of these big spikes drive you crazy. And I argued with him, and he was absolutely right. The funny thing is that the stores were not ready to do that. They couldn't do it. It took them 2 years before they changed their accounting system to allow us to put things in consignment, which is kind of funny. So they were eager to pay us money and then start to get the money back, then just do this. But it made a huge difference later on because it allowed us to really understand our business on sales to end users that don't come back. Example from another angle, and then we will start digging into what is and what isn't a growth engine and how they work. So at ZoomInfo, we collected about 99.3% of invoices, which is a very high standard for those of you who are not familiar of collections. And the interesting thing is that the whole thing was done by a single person. Her name is Donna Angelucci, my dear friend. And even when the company was approaching $100 million, she was the only person in collections. She had a lot of connections with the Boston police, but many of our customers were not in Boston. So what was the process? The process was fairly simple. Whenever we issued an invoice, and it was due about 30 days, so 2 weeks in advance, she sent a reminder. Then she called and she said, I hope it's already in your system. We are going to pay it, yes, no, and so forth. And basically made sure that nobody didn't know that they owe us money. And she also figured out that small customers were a big pain in. So she said, we're not selling to any small customer unless they give a credit card upfront and we charge it. And also, if a customer didn't pay, she immediately escalated to the salespeople. Salespeople hate talking to customers who don't pay because they already got the commission, right? So they don't care. And they don't want to alienate anybody. She told them, well, if he doesn't pay, I turn off his account. And she did it several times, and salespeople learned that they don't futz around with her. So she built a system that, without working really hard, she was also the gossip center in the company, so she had time to hear all the gossip and communicate it to me. And so, and all of that while accomplishing that. So the reason I gave all of these anecdotes is just to show you the various areas where this concept applies. So how do you build a growth engine, right? You're sitting in here and saying, wow, Yonatan is talking for about an hour, but how the hell do I do that? And the answer is simple. First of all, you ask yourself, okay, I'm doing this. What will be the benefit if I can scale it up? If the answer is not serious, then don't worry about it. If you can see a lot of benefits in scaling something up, that's a good area to start thinking, okay? The second question is even more critical. What stops you from escalating? I call those inhibitors. Sometimes I call them friction, and the difference is not big. There is a difference, but what are the inhibitors? So anything in red is a question. What is the most common inhibitor that you can think of? And those of you who heard me about 100 times say that, please don't answer. I want the people who never heard what my answer is. What do you think is the most common inhibitor? People. You know the famous saying, if it wasn't for the employees and the customers, business would be so easy. So people, that's the bane of business and of life, basically. So what's the problem with people? Remember, you want to build a growth engine, so that means you want to grow, you want to add more people. That means you need to find people. And it's very hard to find the right people, always. I am a little bit older than many of you. I hired many people. I fired more people than I hired. And I still never, ever was able to figure out how to choose the right people. I even learned something more serious. Those of the people that I met and told me I'm a genius at hiring people. I know exactly how to hire people. When I asked them to do it for me, they were a total failure. So I feel a little bit better that I'm not the only idiot in town. Anybody who tries to tell me that they know how to hire people, I take them with not a grain of salt, but a big pile of salt. Second, it's very hard to recruit. You know, you have to talk to them. It's expensive, it's inefficient, and the results are questionable. Me and my brother have a joke. He also had a fairly big company. And we said, usually it's the third person you hire that turns out to be a good hire. So can we somehow skip directly to the third person? We haven't yet figured it out. So here's my statistics, at least. 10% of the recruits are a joy. A joy means you tell them what to do, they do it. You don't pay attention to them. The work is just done. They're nice, they smile, and they're smart as hell, and they get results. 10%, 1 out of 10. That's kind of my experience. 10% are also easy. They are the disaster. You know, you tell them what to do, they come after a week and they ask you, did you really mean that? No, I said this. Okay, fire them. The problem is the 80% in the middle. Remember, they are not joy, because joy was the 10%. And they are not a disaster. And I'm not talking about the crowding here. You are all in this category, okay? So, present people excluded. I'm not talking about you. The fact that you are here already made you a joy. But that's the reality, okay? And anybody who thinks differently should leave the room. So, I give you a few laws about it. So I like that one. It's really funny. It's a guy called Derek J. de la Sola, okay? Price. He's a British sociologist, historian. And he started looking at articles in the science literature because they started collecting references. You know, they now grade people in academics by how many people refer to their articles and refer and all of that great stuff. So all of this is now in databases. It's very easy to do research on it. So he did research on it, and he took a few areas of research, and he found something really bizarre. Let's say that there were 1,000 articles written on that subject, in this area of research, and there were 100 writers, 100 scientists working on it. Then 50% of the articles, like 500 articles, were written by the square root, just to make it more scientific, the square root of the number of writers, which is 10. Okay? So out of the 1,000 articles, 500 were written by 10 people, and 90 other people wrote the other 500. Or a small percentage of individuals in any organization, they took the same law and checked it, are responsible for most of the total output and results. From my personal experience, it is true. You look at every company, even the huge ones, and you look at the number of people that really made a big influence on the company, not by their opinion. By their opinion, even the receptionist made a huge difference. Parkinson law. Those of you who, that's an English writer who did some research on the British Navy, and he figured out the following rules. In every organization, people promote themselves by hiring a team to do their job. Why? Because if they want to promote themselves when they have a boss, they can't kill the boss, it's illegal, so they don't kill the boss. But they can expand their scope by hiring people. So a job that was done by one person, 5 years later, there is a department of 10 people with 3 layers of managers in there to do the job. Why? For obvious reason. And the second law, which I call it the last egg, boiled egg for Shabbat, is that the work will expand to fill the time planned for its completion. Why I'm calling it that? Because it was my mother's story. She made all the Shabbat preparations on Thursday. The only thing she needed to do on Friday was boil eggs for Shabbat. But because that was the only thing she needed to do, it took the whole Friday. Okay? So, and now I'll give you my laws, okay? So my laws are that managers spend most of their valuable time on employees they end up firing. Think about it. I have gazillion examples. Why? Because you're not sure they're at the 10% that are a disaster or the low end of the 80%. So you spend so much time on it instead of spending time with your best people and helping them and working with them. That's reality. Anybody who manages knows that's true. If you look at what you spend your week on, you will realize how many hours you spent with a person you really detest and you want to fire. Second law, every 3 people somehow cause a 4th person to be hired. And I explain. Okay? You have a really good engineer. He's working, he's doing a tremendous amount of work, and you're excited about it, and you tell him, how can we make you produce more? And he says, my cousin is really a genius, we should hire him as well. And you say, okay. So you hire his cousin, and the 2 of them work like a couple. You know, it flies. It's phenomenal. 1 + 1 = 2.5. It's great. Now you're enthused. You have another uncle. No, but I have my neighbor who is really good. Okay, they bring the neighbor. Now you have 3 people. Wait a minute, 3 people need a manager. They need a team lead, right? Okay, so now you have 2 choices. Take one of the good engineers and make him a team lead and lose the good engineers, or bring a team lead from the outside. Most companies end up bringing a team lead from the outside. Now, what does a team lead do? He talks to the other team leads because he's not going to waste his time with these people, right? Every 3 people bring a 4th person, and the rest of it is, you know, it's iterations. So I think you understand why this is happening. So if you think about the impact on it on profitability, 70 to 80% of any technology company cost is around people. Salaries, rent, overhead, travel, I mean, you name it, you look at the end of the budget, that's about the biggest cost ever. And these are rigid expenses. Okay? You cannot tell an employee, you know what, I don't really need you next week, so don't come next week, don't get paid. In September, I might need you for a few days. It doesn't work this way. Remember Volt and Amazon and all of these? The moment you hire a person, on the 30th of the month, the check goes out, whether you like it or not. And if you want to get rid of that person, it takes, you have to now shimua, right? All of that crap. So even if you decided to get rid of the person, it's still expensive to do. This is the worst expense you can have in terms of rigidity. It's totally not flexible. Oh, and by the way, salaries always go up. I tried to make them go down, didn't go very well, I don't know why. So, rule number one when you want to build a growth engine is replace work done by people with software and processes that require less people. In most cases, you cannot reduce the number of people, but you can increase the output without adding people. So just to be realistic, okay? You want to grow, you want to make money, and you want to have it scalable, don't hire people. I'll repeat it if you didn't hear. Don't hire people. It will kill your growth engine. Because only the third one might work, remember that, okay? The first two are a disaster. And again, not the current present people in here. All of you are just a dream. Okay. So how does it come into numbers? You know I like to do numbers. So there is a measure called sales per employee, which is basically a very important measure and an indicator. And I found this chart. Unfortunately, it's from 2017. Surprisingly, I didn't find anything newer, even though the numbers are out there, because every public company has to publish the number of employees and the revenues. But I haven't seen anything like that for the most recent years. Okay? So not surprising, to the right is Apple. We talked about it. Facebook, Alphabet is Google, and you start seeing that the tech companies that have figured out growth engines are out there. Okay? But as you can see, sales per employees in those good companies are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and up, where salaries, usually average salaries in those companies is maybe 150,000. So the rest of it is profits, which is why they are worth so much money. Okay? So if you ask yourself, how well am I doing? Calculate your sales per employee. Take your revenues, divide it by the number of people you have, and if you are below 200,000, you can improve dramatically. That's usually where most companies at the early stages are, about $150,000, $200,000, which is not great. Okay, so now we understand that there are inhibitors, and inhibitors are all the things that stand in the way of scaling up the process. So, and friction are all the things that just slow down the process. They don't inhibit, they just make it longer, like what I described about the Samsung phones. You need to read articles, talk to friends. It just slows down the process. It's friction. Okay? So when you want to build a growth engine, think very carefully about what stops you and what delays you every step of the way. So what are the enablers? They fall into two very broad categories. Continuous removal of inhibitors and friction. When I say continuous, and I put an underscore for it, is you keep thinking about it, because the inhibitor you removed yesterday reveals the next one. It's always like that, okay? So you have to think about it all the time. How can I make it faster, better, cheaper? And it's usually removing problems. And there are endless number of problems. Don't ask me why, but every time I try to get to the bottom of it, I found another turtle underneath it. Okay, so there are turtles all the way down. And those of you who don't understand the joke, I'll explain it at the end. Or, obviously, what all of you thought, new ideas how to do things efficiently. I'm not, making fun of that, but in most cases, just removing hurdles and frictions and inhibitors makes a big difference. And don't hire people. Figure out how to remove all of this without hiring people. Okay, I'm going now into a slightly different subject and want to share with you a real dilemma. Okay, so obviously when I talk about growth engine, all of you think about sales, right? Obviously. But when you go to sales, there is a dilemma. You can build the sales organization, but there's a problem. In sales organization, the number of people is linear with the sales growth, which is absolutely against what I just said. And I did it. Why? You can do it, and I'll explain how. But this is really a decision you have to think about, okay? Sales organizations are the only exception where, unfortunately, you keep growing it if you want to grow. Other options is to develop e-commerce, right? All of you say, oh, why don't we do it e-commerce? But it's good only for small transactions. Now, nobody's going to put a credit card for $50,000 or $20,000. So you have a problem. You either do this or that. Or a combination. And actually, we have many, many examples of combinations. And the combination goes like that. You have a free product, then you move to e-commerce, and then you move to the corporate sale. And you can find it all on the web. You don't have to worry about it. With my text. And we will translate it into Hebrew and even write it in Arabic. Okay. So HubSpot, you can start free, I think 2 seats or something like that, I don't remember. Then if you want to really use it, you pay something, and then as you keep growing, you get a phone call from a salesperson. He says, oh, I see you guys are using it. Let me give you our best offer, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And look at the list. Zoom video, the same thing, right? You can, as a user, use it for free. After 40 minutes, it stops. Zoho, Salesforce, Slack, LinkedIn, Google Workspace, blah, 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 blah. Look at all the companies almost, and they have figured out this. Unfortunately, at ZoomInfo, I didn't figure it out. I went the other way around. And this is really critical to listen to what I'm saying now. So I started with that. I built a sales organization. And the reason I did it, it was easy. I brought in a salesman. I didn't know who I'm going to sell to. I didn't figure it out. It was the year 2001. Just bought a person. Actually, on the first one I fired, the second one worked, so I didn't have to wait to number 3. That was big luck, because I knew the second one. I brought him from recruiting to become sales. And sales grew fantastically. We sold for about, a license was about $1,000 a month. And we brought in more salespeople, and we grew. And then we said, this is ridiculous. We need to develop an e-commerce option. The only difference between the corporate one and the e-commerce one was the size or the amount of data you get. And there we encountered the problem. When we introduced it, the salespeople went on a riot, literally on a riot. And they said, look, I was working on a $10,000 deal. The customer went on our website. He saw that he can, for $99, start working with it. So he told me, I'm still interested in the 10,000 one, but let me first use the low-end one for 2-3 months, see that I really like it, and then we will talk. And the salespeople said, you hold me responsible for the quota, and you pull the rug from under me. I tried 6 times to introduce e-commerce and failed. They still don't have real e-commerce at ZoomInfo. Why? Because I did it wrong. And think about it. If you take anything out of this lecture today, this is the most deep lesson I can share with you. Start by thinking this. And how does that work? Okay. Yeah, this means start with free e-commerce and corporate sales. I'm not sure it really works in your organization, I don't know. But as a thought process, what you basically want to do is say individuals, even if they are corporate individuals, they work for a company, but as they use it individually, then they can just put a credit card, pay $99 a month or whatever, or maybe even have a version that is free. But when I start seeing traction in the organization, then I have a sales organization that calls and says, hey, I see you have 10 people who pay individually. We can give you a better deal. And it has all of these other features and yada, yada, yada. Just force yourself to think, can you do that? It's not always possible. But I didn't even think about it. It was the year 2000. I didn't think about it. And I paid a huge price. Honestly, I later on learned how to do it, but I was already on my way out. Didn't interest me anymore. Okay, any questions on that one? Yes.
What could you do if you need the whole organization to work with the system? So it means that once you start, the benefit is only if it's an organization level, not just one person using it.
I don't know how to solve your specific problem. I'm just saying I failed. And it was tremendously painful and stupid. I mean, the company was successful. I made a lot of money, all of the good things. But that's not the point. The point is I felt like I tried 6 times to do it, and I failed each and every time. And I knew that the right thing was to do this, and I couldn't do it. So every time I failed was because the salespeople basically went rioting. Literally rioting. They were standing in front of my room, and they said, we're not going to meet our quota because you just ruined the quota. You just added friction and inhibitor to my sales. Yeah, I could fire all of them, but that would be really stupid. I don't know. I'm just saying, try to think this way if you can, okay? That's all what I'm saying. I don't have solutions for everybody. I'm just sharing with you mistakes, which is the most valuable thing I can do is share mistakes with you, okay? All right. So, we talked about sales organization, right? That it's people, I think you kind of understand my opinion about adding people, and it's linear with the number of salespeople. What can you do? Okay, the reality of it, that most organizations hire salespeople, and I don't think they're stupid, okay? But what can we do? So I introduced this very simple measure. It's a common measure, I didn't invent it, okay? Called cost of sales. What is cost of sales? It's the total cost of the sales organization, including all the managers, the commissions, the rent, whatever you want to include in it. But everything that has to do with the sales organization is an organization, okay, including the Salesforce charge, everything that you need. And you divide by the revenue generated, okay? So the cost of sales usually is between 15 to 25% of revenues. If you are at the 15%, you're doing a really good job. If you are at 25%, you need to improve. We were hovering around 19 most of the time. Okay? And again, it's fairly rigid. Why is it rigid? Because you hire a person, you give them a quota, so you kind of person, the cost of the person and the quota is basically this. Okay?
You measure only the sales organization or the marketing?
Without the marketing. Without the marketing. Again, you can do whatever you want. You just have to understand what you measure, okay? So how do you reduce the cost of sales? Okay? What you need first and foremost, without it, don't even bother hiring people, is you need a stable and reliable source of leads, okay? And you need a clear path, training to reach the quota in a few months. So what I'm teaching you now or showing you now is actually all due to a guy called Peter Wayman. He is a physicist, MIT graduate, an engineer, a little autistic, and VP of sales. Genius, and he built the sales organization at ZoomInfo on scientific or engineering grounds, and he taught me a lot, which is what I'm telling you now, okay? So Think about the last line. When you build an organization that is going to grow, if you want to grow, okay, it's going to grow, you have to build around middle of the road people. You can't expect to bring in the best salespeople time and again, time and again. It just won't happen. So don't bring C people, but you should build the organization to perform well on B people, which means a reasonable salesperson who is willing to work reasonable hours, he listens to you, that's about it. Nothing genius. He's not going to cold call. He's not going to discover opportunities. Forget it. What you want him to do is give him a lead and have him convert that lead to a sale above average on the organization. That's all what you want to do. But for that, you need a stable source of leads, and you need to tell them how to do it, and you need to train them. We brought a new person from day one to reaching quota in about 4 months. And the quota was around $800,000. So they reached $800,000 a year run rate in about 4 months because everything was standardized. Everything was standardized. And you want them to be successful. So you want the complement to be something that they are proud of. What he instituted is that everybody, pretty much everybody, was above quota. I asked him, that's stupid. So you put the quota below what they do. Because how do you get them to do above quota? You lower the round, right? That's easy. Lower the bar and everybody is above the bar. He says, yeah, I know. I do it on purpose. And I said, why? Because they are excited. He says, everybody feels a winner. And he built the complement so that the cost was the right cost. Doesn't matter. But philosophically, he wanted B players to feel great that they succeed. That's what he wanted. And he built it. So that's what you do if you have no choice. Second that I want to talk about is what are the friction, let's call it, on the way to sales. And what I'm going to tell you now is similar to what I told you about people, which is kind of counter to what most people think. When you do B2B, most salespeople say, I need the ability to negotiate. You know, I know the customer. I talk to the customer. If I just gave him 10% discount, he would have bought right now. You're laughing again, right? The people who managed it know exactly what I'm talking about. I've yet to see a salesman not saying that. The fact that you don't let me negotiate is stupid. It's against everything I did in my life. I'm a successful salesman. I'm above quota, blah, 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 blah. Why can't I discount the product? And the reason is, think about the supermarket where you walk in the line and you start negotiating about every piece of bread. I don't want to stand in that line. Efficiency. When the price is fixed, it's far more efficient. When you do discounts, here's what happens. The guy on the other side said, wait a minute, he just gave me 10% discount so that I move. I'm in no rush. If I wait another week, I will get 20% discount. So, what?
And by the end of the quarter, I'll get that.
Exactly, right? I'll get to the end of the quarter, don't worry. Okay, so what they do is they say, I really, really appreciate the 10% discount. I need to talk to my CFO because as far as I remember, we don't have the budget for it. Then he comes back and he says, my CFO really wanted to thank you, but he wants 50% discount because we don't have the budget. And if you really want to sell this quarter, we need to do with the budget we have, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So it lengthened the negotiations. And so my salespeople said, and by the way, I failed. Okay, what I'm telling you is my wishful thinking. I failed. My salespeople discounted. We brought it to a rational level because Peter Wayman was nice. He allowed them to do about 10% discount. But I told my salespeople, said, listen, if the guy insists on discount, say, oh, no problem, sir. Absolutely no problem. But in our company, the only person who has the authority to authorize a discount is the CEO. Here's the phone number of the CEO. I'm sure he will be happy to talk to you. I never got a single phone call. Maybe they didn't say it, I don't know, but I never got a single phone call. What do? You don't say no. You just put friction on the way to a discount. That's all what you do. Okay? Nobody wants to talk to a CEO of a big company. Because it won't. Okay? Second problem with the discount is the next year when you renew the product. Wait a minute, last year you gave me 20% discount, and this year you want to take it away? But we talked about it in the agreement. Yeah, I know we talked about it, but if you want me to renew, I need the discount, right? And worst, when customers talk to one another and they find one paid less than the other, it gets to be really angry, really, really ugly. You don't want to be there. Promotions. Okay, guys, for Christmas we do a promotion. People expect promotions to be year-round. That's the reality. So they delayed their purchase. That's what happens. Why is Christmas, like Christmas season, 30% of sales of the year? Because they just waited, that's all. Right? It's really simple. It's not that they generated more money Christmas Eve. They just waited. You get this price if you buy before the end of the month, right? You wanted to see that. And what we found out is small customers negotiate and waste more time than big customers. Why? Because they don't have money. It's really simple. They really don't have money. So they negotiate like crazy, and it's not worth the effort, especially as Libby knows if they are from a certain subcontinent to our east. And another friction, which there's nothing you can do about it except be ready, is that big customers have processes that you can't avoid. Security, SOC 2, data security, legal, compliance, you name it, you just will have to go through that. So the only way to deal with it, which we did with Zoom, we basically prepared for it. We had a stack of documents and things that when the customer said, we want this, 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 and this, we just pulled it out of the computer and we sent it. And sometimes we had all kinds of variants of it because some customers wanted it differently. Okay. What else? Pricing scheme. Remember what I said about Apple. I'll go back to Apple. As I said, Steve Jobs is one of the people I really admire. When he introduced iPod, he also introduced the iTunes, right? Made it really, really simple to buy a song. And lo and behold, regardless of how good the song was, it was 99 cents. That was it. Doesn't matter what song you wanted. It was 99 cents. You didn't have to think about anything. It's 99 cents. Reduces friction. Product options. Sometimes you look at the product, you have no clue what's included, what's not, what's the stuff. Okay, this is a big thing. Every time you need to think about what you do, we lose you. So multiple decisions are much worse than one decision. And I'll give many examples. Nowadays, all of us are aware of automatic renewals, right? So you purchase anything with renewals, they tell you it's going to automatically renew unless you notify them 30 days in advance, right? Why do they do it? So you don't have to think. You can still cancel, but you don't have to think about renewal. Amazon Prime, that's an ingenious thing. So they did free 2-day shipping on all products, right? Started with it costing $79, today it's $139. The interesting thing is it increased sales dramatically. And not so much because because you paid for the freight, right? But because you didn't have to think. It's kind of, I just pay for the product I bought. I don't worry about it. It's their problem. Yeah, I paid for it in advance, but it's their problem. And that increased sales significantly. I tried to find the numbers, I couldn't, but I remember reading it. 200 million subscribers at about $140 each. Just that is about $30 billion annually, just those subscriptions. Just so you understand the power of these things. Microsoft Office, again, they went through gazillion iterations and structures and whatever until they figure out, I'm going to bundle these 4 pieces of software. In most homes, they don't use all of them. They use one, the other, or whatever it is. But they made it simple, $99 a year for the whole family on many computers. You don't have to think about it. Just think about it. You don't have to think, I have it on my laptop, I have it on my PC at home, I have it on my PC here, my wife has it. It's just simple, 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 not thinking. Keep it that way. Phone app stores, right? The first thing you do there is you put your credit card and you forget it's there. From then on, you just click and something happens in the background and you just don't feel the money goes out. Right? It's 2 levels away. Credit card is already not real money. It's just a piece of plastic and a few numbers. And this is not even a credit card. It's just, I just clicked. Nothing, right? Friction, friction, friction. And of course, all-inclusive vacations, you know, cruises, Club Med, all of those. Again, I don't need to think. I go with the kids, we eat breakfast, we drink, we eat ice cream. I don't need to think. Remove friction. These are just examples, okay? I'm not saying this is what you need to do. I'm just trying to explain what is included in the growth engine. Every friction, every hindrance reduces the efficiency of the system. Okay, I think we're getting close to end of the time. I just want to talk about 2 more things. What is the difference between branding and marketing? Okay, so let's start with marketing. It's the process to generate leads and sales, right? Direct. I want to generate leads. I want to generate sales. Branding is the growth agent behind it. It just makes it easier to accomplish. Think about it as this is the foundation, and on top of it, I build the marketing. But what are the inhibitors when doing common marketing? So we all do marketing, right? As I said, you bring in a VP marketing, they change your logo, and then they start thinking. So we do email campaigns. What's the problem with email campaigns? Nobody reads them. I want to see in here, how many of you read 100% of their emails? No volunteers? I'm shocked. Okay. Advertising. Advertising is an interesting example. I won't have the time to cover it this time. It's expensive, and usually the results, Google and other platforms make sure that you kind of pay what it's worth. So it's not a big bonanza. High customer acquisition cost. CAC is customer acquisition cost. Trade shows, we talked about it, expensive and not scalable. And content. So we talk about content, but it's hard to create new and interesting content. So how do you handle all of these inhibitors and frictions? Webinars hard to produce, okay, all that stuff. So I want to share with you a few ideas, and each company can do it with their own ideas. So the 2 obvious that I talk a million times about is the long tail, SEO long tails, and free products, but it's not always easy to come up with these ideas. But I want to offer or suggest another way of doing things, which I think can be adopted and done by many companies. Ideas for easily creating and interesting, engaging content. Thought leadership. What is thought leadership? It's basically research, and the first point is the most important one. There is a magic to numbers. If I tell you that 40% of stores don't have a planogram, it's really interesting, right? The fact that I have no clue what percent really have or not have a planogram is irrelevant. You write 40% don't have a planogram, and that's the number. It's kind of bizarre. And you can then even create a pie chart, and you say companies with up to 10 stores, 30% don't have, and from 10 to 50 stores, it's amazing. They go bananas over it. Nobody asks where the hell did you get the numbers from. Just don't. And people love it. That's called factoids. I would call it lioids, sorry from lie, but doesn't matter. It's not a fact. But people love pie charts, they love graphs, they love numbers presented nicely graphically, And don't ask them to multiply or divide or anything. Just show it to me. Okay? So if you can take and start collecting data from your market, then you can start producing content that is very interesting for people because it's easy to digest. I don't have to read an article. I don't have to read 500 words. I can glance at this pie chart, read the few lines below it, and I'm so excited. Okay? So what do? You start calling potential customers and you just interview them. Now you say, why would they talk to me? Chances are 9 out of 10 will not talk to you. But enough that 10 people talk to you, you have enough data to start with. Just fudge the numbers. Don't say 10% that, 20% said that, say 9% this, 11% that, just so that it looks like you have a bigger sample. They always love talking. Once you get the first data and you have the facts factoid, you send it to all your potential customers because now you have something to tell them that is easy to digest and it's interesting and it's cool. And you put another server in it and you say, oh, our next question is this, click in here to answer. Now you will get 20 responses. You create again a nice pie chart and a nice factoid and whatever, and you talk to them again. Gradually, you start talking to a lot of people and you start creating a more meaningful database that starts to be even valuable for you. Okay? So this is really, really interesting. And the interesting thing is when a lot of companies don't do that, you have salespeople, they have BDRs. They talk to customers, but they never really collect data systematically. But if you tell them, here's a chart I want you to fill out when you talk to potential customers, they will do the job while they are trying to sell. Because anyway, the first thing you need to do in sales is understand your customer, right? So just tabulate, prepare the questions and tabulate it, and you get tremendously valuable data that you can publish, you can cross, you can do things. Very interesting. Let's move on. So the next thing is to also show up as a thought leadership. So what you want to do is have the luminaries of the industry talk about you. Reality of it, there's no chance they're going to talk about you because they never heard about you, they don't know who you are, and you're just bothering them. But that's not what you tell them. What you tell them is, I'm organizing a round table of the luminaries of the industry. And I already have Joe and Linda and Joseph and all of these people. And we also want you because you really have significant insight as being the CXO of this company. And you get people. You'll be surprised. And you say, I'm going to send you the questions we want to discuss in the roundtable. You put them in a roundtable by Zoom, so it's very inexpensive, very easy to do. 30 minutes, you record it, obviously, and you promise them that you are going to send them these 30 minutes, as well as short videos about themselves that they can post wherever they want. So you really produce content for them, and remember, people are vain. They really want to have videos of them saying smart stuff and being in this context and so forth. So they will participate. And now what you do is you organize this because you will have the logo of your company on one side of the screen and the logo of the speaker on another side and a big title, he is the CXO of such and such conglomerate. And without saying anything, most people who see it believe they're customers. Why? Because why else would they be on your roundtable? Right? You didn't believe it until 2 minutes ago. So you send subtle messages that you are the thought leader in this industry. Add to that all the charts and graphs that you produce, and you suddenly become a known entity that people talk about and think about. Oops, sorry. And the last point, because we need to finish, is there is a group of people that really would love to talk to you. Now, most of you are too young, but there comes an age, usually is around 67, and until yesterday, you were sitting in a nice room and people would come to you and say, Yonatan, what do I do here? I need your permission. I need your signature. You know, we want you to speak here. You're busy. The following day, you celebrate, you go to the golf club and you say, thank God I don't have to work anymore. The following months, you wake up in the morning and you have your idea what you're going to do today. You're sick and tired of playing golf. Your wife gets on your nerves. And nobody really calls you. Nobody. You are a nobody. And you are very open to people saying, we really want to talk to you about the industry because after 30 years of being the CXO in X, you really understand the industry. And you write his title with a small X, as you said, on the side. And they are the best people to engage. They love to be engaged because they are bored and nobody cares about them anymore. So what I'm trying to convey to you here as a growth engine, remember we're talking about growth engine and marketing, okay? Stay away from all what everybody is doing because it's not going to work. Try to be creative on how you create content in a way that is scalable. You can do a roundtable once a month easily. You don't have to think about the content. There are 4 other people who are going to talk. You ask them, you have to invent 3 questions, okay? And they will talk, believe me, you will have to stop them, okay? And once you did 3 of them, they will call you and say, where is the next roundtable? You forgot to invite me because all my friends are already there, and what about me? So you just have to start the engine, which is very different than writing blogs where you are online, okay? So I'm trying to give you ideas on how to think about branding and marketing in ways that are growth engines scalable. Hope I succeeded. Thank you.